Isaac, I'm going to throw it back to you. Talk about forest and welcome Scott Josiah to them. Hi, Scott.
Hey, hi, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for joining us. We're all very happy to have Scott on the island. He's a retired state forester for Nebraska and director of the Nebraska Forest Service, retired, and now chair of the board for the Lummi Island Heritage Trust. He's been a great resource to us. And Mike and I asked him for a quote when we were doing the series of Water Watchers articles about water infiltration, recharge of aquifers. And this was his quote. Scott, would you like to say a little something about the dynamics of we have deep forest areas on the island, that's great. But on the northern half of the island, a lot of it's, developed, it's forested, different kind of, what can people do in their own properties to help retain water?
So first, let me just back up a little bit and say that, before settlement, this entire island was essentially forested. And so we had very deep soils full of organic matter. The forests were old growth forests. So there was a lot of debris on the floor, organic debris, so forest floor. And so there was a lot of moisture that just was absorbed. It just infiltrated. There were probably very few floods on the island, very little runoff. It was probably at least rapid runoff during major events. Most of it just soaked in like a big sponge, like the quote says. But now we've changed things. We've changed things quite a lot. We've cleared a lot of the forest. The old growth is all gone. We've changed those soils and we've run machinery over them. We've compacted them. Even today, we have people buying 5-acre lots and removing half the trees and running equipment over that and clearing it off for either housing or driveways or other impervious surfaces. In other words, a surface that cannot absorb any water at all and it just runs off. And these kinds of impacts are having impacts on our aquifers, and we don't know really what kind of impacts those changes are having. With all that said, I think it's important for us, all of us, to think about our water when we do things to the land. And if we own some land, retain that forest if we can, or retain as much as we can without disturbance, so that we're not disturbing the soils. If we have areas that have been disturbed, and it's a great thing to plant trees, obviously, to begin to restore that soil fertility and soil ability to infiltrate and absorb water, and then release it slowly, either to seeps and streams, temporary streams, or right to the aquifer. The statistic that Mike came up with earlier was that 6% of the water that comes from rainfall is infiltrated and goes back to the aquifer. That's largely through forests, and we better protect them if we want to keep our aquifers in good shape.
Thanks, Scott. Yep. Yeah, so some terms to talk about: stormwater or runoff is water that is, we experienced, for example, last November, such a heavy rainstorm or a period of rain that you probably, if you were on the island, you noticed it just sheeting off. Here on the mountain where I live, it was very intense. And that's an example of, say, a more extreme winter. And models are talking about wetter winters. So even though we're getting more rainfall up here, perhaps in the future, if we're not protecting that and stopping or limiting the runoff, we're losing that water into the sea. So we want to do that. One of the most interesting things I found when studying this is that not only the trees sort of slow down the rain as it comes down. So rain's being caught in the leaves, it slowly rains down, so not everything comes down to the soil at one time. Mm-hmm. But the roots of trees and shrubs are causing infiltration channels, so that the water is not just sheeting off, but going down into a water table and down into our aquifers. So the way we landscape our properties here can really help recharge your well. All right, back to you, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Isaac. And also a big thank you to all of the islanders that take rainfall measurements religiously and submit them to the tome. For Elizabeth Kilinowski and Bert Rubash for assembling those in a database and sharing that with us. And Bert came up with, I thought, this pretty explanatory graph. If you look at University of Washington, the climate group there published No Time to Waste 2019, talking about coastal areas and changing climates. And I don't want to get off in a tangent of is it real or not, or circular, or whatever, but they predicted wetter winters, drier summers, and more rainfall. And our data for rainfall for Lummi Island is actually pretty short as climate data goes. We go back to 1980. Everybody here knows how to read a graph, and you can see the blue area, those months that stayed relatively steady in rainfall month to month. The orange area, summertime, looks to me like a little less rainfall over on the right side of the graph than the left side, but that's just me. Make up your own mind. And the winter months and the shoulder months to winter generally have seen an increase in the amount of rainfall. And that very top stacked bar is in 1980, we were seeing about 32 inches of rain on the island per year. And now we're steadily seeing more and more, up to about 36. Of course, that could change next year, and who knows. But anyway, our winters wetter. Are summers becoming drier? Are we getting more rainfall? There are consequences to climate change, and the Department of Ecology in Washington said that changes in our climate and sea level will likely affect coastal wells in ways that we don't know. I think those ways are probably all negative, but they need more study and more time. And that's what we want to do, is we want to study this stuff. It's been 16 years and we don't know where we're at. Next slide. So where are we at on this water budget? So the big number up on top, we get about 117 million gallons of aquifer recharge. It's the 6% that doesn't go out through the culvert and puddle in your driveway, and so about 117 million gallons a year of rainfall recharge into our aquifers on the north half of Lummi Island back in 2006. And I want to be clear, that's not the entire island, and it's not yesterday. Add to that, back in 2006, when there were quite a few less of us and we didn't have VRBOs and all of those visitors that come, we were contributing about 14 million additional gallons per year from our septic systems. Yes, a lot of that goes up, a lot of it stays, but also a lot of it goes straight down into the aquifer along with everything else. And if your septic system is not working properly, as it should, sending some stuff down there that you probably don't want to get back up through your well. Just saying. So there's a reason why we should inspect our septic systems once every 3 years. And I'll not dwell on that point, except to say there's, it's like the dipstick in your car. If you don't ever check your oil and you run out, shame on you. So get out there. If you haven't done it, you can take a course online through the county. Maybe a 1 hour of your time, learn how to do it yourself, and you're good to go. And you'll know that you have oil in your crankcase and you don't have too much sludge and scum in your septic tank. Okay, the sermon on septic is over. North Island consumed about 37 million gallons in 2006. So let's see, if I do my math right, we only consumed about a third of what was down there. And it's raining more, according to that last slide. So what's the problem, Mike? Well, the problem is we don't know. And the problem is it's very complex. Not all aquifers are created equal. Not all homes are clustered or spaced out evenly. So you really want to find out what your well is doing. That's the important thing, is your well. So that's end of end of that thought. I'll turn it back over to Isaac.
You know, this presentation, notes, we're not really talking about your personal water conservation. There's a lot of resources out there to how to use less water within your household. This presentation is more about the big picture, about how we're all sharing our same groundwater source on northern Lummi Island, and how that macro relationship with water is affecting all of us.